Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Singularity Lab, your home for commentary and analysis on cutting-edge science and technology. As exponential growth hits unimaginable speeds, we are here to help you understand humanity's transition towards this seemingly inevitable fusion of humans and their 21st century technology, simply known as the Singularity. If you don't know what the Singularity is, don't worry about it. We're going to break into that. We're going to talk a lot about technology and transhumanism, but we've got an amazing panel for you today. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce my homie, my boy. This is the gentleman that's going to be co-hosting with Kristen and I tonight. So if you haven't met Kristen, this is my lovely wife, Kristen, and we're going to be seating here at the Singularity desk now, as we call it. But I'm going to be bringing in Luis Jimenez, who is the host of the Unidentified Celebrity Review. Luis is an actor and a comedian out in LA. He's a UAP enthusiast. And he is the creator of the smash hit YouTube channel, The Unidentified Celebrity Review. Luis, how are you?
I'm doing well, Michael. Thank you for having me on the first ever episode of the Singularity Lab.
The first ever episode of the Singularity Lab. I'm so excited. It's great to have you. And you know, one of the cool things when you and I started working together was we just had this kind of chemistry. You know, we just kind of had a good time.
Yeah. I think your wife and my girlfriend hate it. But I don't think, maybe they'll never publicly say that. I don't know. But I agree. I think, we hit it right off the bat, man. I could not have, I remember the first second we started talking, I was like, okay, this guy is cool. Like right from the first moment. It's just one of those things that clicks. So yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, no, it's great to have you. And sometimes these things do just click. And I've got another gentleman who I'm going to be introducing now. His name is Tim McCauley. And this is certainly a gentleman that I click with and have clicked with through over the years. Tim is a systems and process consultant who geeks out about exponential technology and creating a better tomorrow. He's actually the best business coach I've ever hired. And I'm going to bring him in right now. Tim, how are you?
Good, man. I didn't think you'd really say that.
It's true.
Hey, as long as it's true.
Hey, man.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Hey, Tim, it's great to have you, and we really appreciate you joining the show. I think this is going to be a huge amount of fun. We got a lot of folks joining us here. Let's just say hello real quick to John. We got Walker, John Gelrick. I believe it's Gelrick. Anonymous Rex, we got Alien Girl. Welcome everyone. Make sure you're chatting it up. Let us know if you have questions for the panel as we break into this conversation. We have a lot to share with you guys tonight. And our final guest for right now, I know we might have another one coming in a little later. Luis might be aware of this person, but we'll see if he shows up. But I would like to introduce alien scientist Jeremy Reese, who is a futurist and fringe technology analyst with a focus on alternative propulsion and anti-gravity. He holds a bachelor's of science in physics and mathematics. Welcome, Jeremy. How are you?
Hey, how's it going, guys? How's everyone doing?
Good, man. Good. It's great to have you. And I want to kick this conversation right off because we got a lot to get to. So first of all, I wanted to talk about a little bit about what the singularity is. And I know this is a concept that can often be confused because it's in mathematics, it's in physics. So I just kind of wanted to break down exactly what that is. And so when you think about a singularity in mathematics, it's that indefinable point that really misbehaves and breaks down all logic. And so in mathematics, it's really the point at which mathematicians can no longer really understand what that component is. If you think about what the universe was prior to the Big Bang, that's a singularity. It's not understandable. And so when we talk about the technological singularity, this is the point at which technology becomes so uncontrollable and irreversible that the very civilization we live in we can't even understand what it was like before that happened. So I kind of want to get your guys' interpretation of what you think of as a singularity and where you see us right now in society and where you see us kind of going. Tim, why don't you kick us off?
Me?
Yeah, man. Hit
When I
it.
did Singularity, I learned about the concept from Peter Diamandis's books, Abundance. That I actually went to A360 a couple years ago. One of my clients paid for a ticket for me to sit in the room. I got the VIP treatment and stuff. So I go more on the Ray Kurzweil kind of idea of singularity, where taking the exponential thing and extracting what the future could look like. I like the fact that Diamandis does it in all the different realms of what society can be like. So why I got so excited about it was because I realized that without knowing it and without seeing what the vision of the future would look like, which is more like the Jetsons and like what we have now, the reimagining of the supply chain, everything about it, I realized I was training for the wrong future. I was training for a future that wasn't going to exist, and I wouldn't have the skills to thrive in that future. I would be very dependent on outdated skills, outdated modes of thinking, and outdated ways of living. And I just love the idea that that instead of the top down, that we need to be growing from the bottom up, and that instead of looking at like the world is falling apart, that what we can do is go, okay, so population's not going to stop growing. How can we reimagine it so that we can get back in line with the nature cycle of the planet? So that's
Right.
where I'm at with Singularity.
Yeah. For me, I mean, it's really about that's that really speaks to that point, right? Because we are headed in such an insane technological growth that the question is, are we headed towards a dystopia? Should we be afraid? Or how can we as human beings begin to reimagine what that looks like, and how can we have our fingerprints on the future? Because it could be a pretty scary place, or it could be a pretty extraordinary place, depending on how we put our spin on it. Luis, what are your thoughts?
I mean, you're the one who kind of got me thinking about the singularity. I never really even thought about it, but the thing that I relate to it the most is that I know we're getting there because we already have things in society that we can't live without, like our cell phone. As soon as we walk out of the house, even if we've driven 4 miles, we're going to turn around and go get the cell phone. Even though the computer at work probably has all of the same tools that you need, you could definitely live without it. You can get through the day without it. There's no doubt. But you're still going to turn around and go get that phone because it's now part of you.
Right? Like you even lived through that generation, but now you're like, how do people know where to pick up their kids at the mall?
Yeah. Like, I remember calling my mom when I would go to the mall, and I would call collect, and in the prompt where it said say your name, I'd be like, "Mom, please come pick me up," and then she'd pick up and deny the charges, and then she'd come pick me up at the mall. And it was like, that's how we found each other. And even when the pager came out, I never had the pager, but once the cell phone came out, that was an absolute world-changing technology. And it's so weird because it's like we've gone backwards with it. Well, with GPS, but what I was going to say was...
I went from MapQuest to actually...
Yeah, no, it's insane. But what I was going to say is we've gone from calling each other on the phone, which is a communication that is much better than any form of communication on the planet, but yet we insist on texting each other in this format of communication where all sorts of things get lost. It's weird. It's weird. But so that's how I relate to it.
Calling people's rude because they might be busy.
See, there you go.
You text them.
But you're texting them. I mean, clearly they got enough time. If I could tell you how many texts I've been in where it's a 15, 20-minute exchange that could have been solved over a 2-minute phone call.
Right.
It's so time wasting. And that's why I love Twitter to retweet things and tell people when my show's going on. But if you want to have a discussion or an argument, I'm not going there first. And so I think something has to happen in this singularity where we go away from this and start communicating on a much deeper level. I don't know when that's going to happen because it doesn't seem like the cell phone's going anywhere. But from what you're saying, and my understanding of this singularity is that pretty soon that cell phone will be part of your being. You know, like where I will have this live stream with 4 people in a square, and we won't have to say anything, and the people listening won't have to like hear anything. You know,
absolutely. These panels are like the future. There's companies are doing this now since COVID. The number of cameras that have sold out. The microphone companies are like, people are buying high-end equipment, audio and video equipment, because we're at the technological level now that it's almost like being in the same room with you all. So
it's true.
Yeah, it's pretty extraordinary. And then you have companies like Microsoft and Zoom who are developing these VR technologies that are going to allow you to feel like you're literally in the same room. So what we're doing right now, in 10 years may feel so ridiculously outdated, like a pager would feel to us now.
Not 10 years.
It's I think it's here.
So within the next 5 years, you should see what they can do with
They have augmented reality.
Yeah, augmented reality is insane. They have a contact lens that they showed at A360 that is maybe 2 generations from. Imagine having Google in a contact lens that as you're walking, it's scanning everything and it's telling you,
like in Terminator when he walks into the bar and
story of this building.
Yeah,
you can buy stuff as you're walking down the street with an AR setup.
Well, have you guys seen the capability of the Oculus Rift during a live sporting event?
Mm-mm.
Now this is where Jeremy's got one. This is where stuff gets interesting. Is when you have right now, you can pay for a 50-yard line or half-court ticket to any basketball game, football game, sporting event, and it gives you the best seat in the house, and it's an unlimited seat. They could sell that seat 1 billion times. So there's that, right? And then this Oculus is connected to your Facebook. So in the places where advertisements would normally be in the stadium, this Oculus is replacing it with advertisement that it knows it's going to attract you to. So it's happening. And not only that, you can sit in a private room, watch this game, hear everything that's going on, and have your buddy sit next to you as an avatar. Yeah. Like that's happening right now. Pretty soon, I think you're going to see those headsets that Jeremy's got. They're going to come with your cable subscription. They're going to give them away for free because the hardware is cheap compared to the profit that they could possibly do on the other end with tech.
Oh my God, it's quite possible they're going to just start giving these things away for free, and I mean, really, just because you think about like Facebook and other social media sites, what's really important to these companies is your data. And so when they have the ability to, first think of VR, they can see your eye movements. They know what you're interested in. They can put on ads and see which way direction your eye goes. And then just wait until they've got the implant in your head. Then they're going to know every single interest you have, and they're going to be able to advertise to you directly. They'll just start giving these. I guarantee you, they're just going to start giving these things away, and they're just going to be jacking your data. So I think that this is why this conversation is so important, because if we want to be a part of the process, if we want to figure out how we don't get used and abused moving into this technological revolution, we need to get very clear on where we're headed and why. And I just wanted to real quick give a little bit of context to this conversation. So the first human beings were using the very first most primitive tools about 5 million years ago. So all we did was we hunt, we slept, we ate, and we reproduced, and we were able to use tools to kill our dinner. 1 million years ago, we discovered fire. 10,000 years ago was the agricultural revolution. 100 years ago, we discovered electricity and shared electricity around the world. 50 years ago, we started to have our computing explode. And for those of you who don't know what Moore's law is, it's the ability for transistors to be condensed in size and that to double every 18 months. So we've gone from just this we've seen this extraordinary growth in such a short period of time. And, you see so much mental illness, depression, all these things, because we've got this new modern world, but our brains haven't really caught up. We haven't really figured out how to live in this new modern world. And I think this is a big part of what we need to figure out as we're seeing this technology develop.
Now we're talking. That's actually what that's what I am screaming at the rooftops to nobody that's listening is that we all have access to the same material that built all of this. We have access to our own attention, and attention is everything in our economy. Up to this point, attention has been everything. But if we don't learn how to control and focus our own attention, someone else is. And that's happening now, and that's happened your whole life. If you don't know how to control your own attention and be emotionally intelligent to be able to metabolize your emotions, someone else is controlling your program. Someone else is controlling your whole freaking day. So that's where I want to come into the conversation and help, because, yeah, we can have a dystopian technology society where Mark Zuckerberg controls the whole world, but probably not. And I don't know that that's his evil plan. I really do think that he's like, man, this could be cool. Like we can make everything so cool. We can have communications. We can have what I see that we can have happen is that we can shorten the length of time to bring ideas from imagination to collaboration to reality.
Right.
That what I believe is that if people can slow themselves down and we can see what's happening, that you predict the future by creating it. And that when we get into these types of conversations, as long as we're not being reactive and responsive, yeah, let's play out the scenario. Like there's definitely, like, probabilistically, considering how humanity behaves, it's a high probability that it turns into a dystopian.
Right.
It's freaking stupid.
Right.
There's also a high probability that with the right mental training that we can not let that happen, and we can really just change the way we operate completely. Like this is a very big moment in the history of mankind, really.
It's a huge moment. And I think it's totally underestimated. I don't think anybody really, because we're constantly bombarded by all of these messages from, either our politics or our, corporations, commercials, whatever, marketing. I'm guilty of that. But we're constantly bombarded by all these things, and we're not really thinking about how are we creating our path forward? What are we trying to do? Aaron says, I work for Google and we have adults in charge. I wouldn't vouch for Facebook.
Even social media, all forms of media are essentially programming. So you're programming yourself and you're programming your mind's computer, and whatever you're programming it with, if you're, programming it with all these ideas, there's so many different ideas on the internet. And I think it's important, you can educate yourself. We have so much information at our fingertips right now. It's like you could literally learn about anything you want. And it's all about, I think it is on us and training ourselves to become better people. But there's also something about, humanity, that we have this dark side, and humanity sort of in a sense of, as we're in this transformation, we're in this pupae stage about to emerge as a butterfly. There's also a darker side of us that's eating us like a cancer from within. And it's almost like we need to focus on working on ourselves and improving ourselves. I think that's our main thing. And I've noticed that as you're you seem like one of these life coaches or something, man. It's like I need a lot of that in my life. I've done a lot of that in the past year, just to turn myself around and build up my channel and start coming back into this, because I realize this is a key moment. There's an unprecedented attention to this subject and this subject matter right now, and I think that moving forward, you guys are all in the right place and getting into this at the right time. And I think,
think of it as a noise to signal ratio. You seem like you have an engineer mind, so you understand what that is, right? Yeah, that's what it is. We each have our own little signal in here. We have this voice of reason that's in there. And if we can slow down and pay attention to how the information is coming in and getting collected and turned into a story of reactivity, we can also break that story and break into and actually start listening to our own signal and then move forward differently. So that noise that we're putting out is more like the feedback loop. So if you go on systems theory, you've got the environment, inputs, process creates an output, which creates your feedback loop. What we're talking about is that so many people are stuck in feedback loop hell.
Right.
It's a self-perpetuating loop of madness, and it's easy to get stuck there because we're seeing the echo of our actions. We're experiencing an echo, so it's easy to get condensed into an echo chamber. And then social media's algorithm actually reinforces that. So if that's all we're doing is if Facebook is the only book you read, then you're going to have a problem. Like, because it's going to narrow and narrow and narrow and narrow your worldview to the point where it's left or right, and it's a big tug of war. Where no, like there's
it's all based on what keeps you scrolling the longest and what keeps you on the site the longest, and that's the feed. That's
you're
the
the only person that has the locus of control. Is what I'm saying. Is that yes,
Right.
they designed it behaviorally designed to suck you in. But there is a way for you to re-engage with that so that you get a message into the noise. That's a signal that pulls people. Again, it's all about attention. If you can pull attention to the conversation that you want, then you can help create a pocket of the world that is the future that we want. And if we are all doing that, then it'll emerge as long as I don't care what you build. Like, as long as it's not hurting me, build whatever future you want, man. You know, like I want you to have happiness and fulfillment.
Well, I think that's just a tough pitch to a billionaire, because it sounds like what you want to do is going to take time, and you can't make money off that. So the question is how do we get people to realize that, but at the same time get them to keep clicking and keep buying things? Because it's like the growing pains of what we're talking about. And the perfect example is look at what's going on at Amazon, and I think their Georgia shipping plant. You've got workers who are striking because the building is so big that they can't take a break to go take a leak, because it takes them 15 minutes to walk to the bathroom and then takes them another 15 minutes to walk back. By the time they get back, they can't go to lunch because they've already used their lunch.
They're not going to have jobs in 5 years, so it doesn't matter.
Right. But at the same well, I was going to say, but at the same time, it's like, you know, is that going to stop you from clicking the buy? What's up, Deep? Is that going to stop you from clicking the buy button on that movie that you want? You know what I mean? Like that's the growing pain that we're at now. And I think the last thing I'll say to add to what you guys are saying, I don't think the singularity complex is possible. And maybe you guys can correct me on this, but I don't think it's possible without everyone's information being 1,000,000% transparent. I don't think it's possible. And what I mean by that is, like, in the future, your social security number is going to be something that's known by every corporation on the planet. Your blood type, your eyes, your retinas, your everything, your fingerprints, your biometrics, all of those things are going to be things that your DNA is going to be in a database somewhere.
It already is.
What I mean.
Mine is.
No,
My
but what I'm saying is they're not running your DNA to determine, you know, like what housing development you get into or whatever. But what I'm saying is I don't think that this combination of all of this information and all of this technology can exist while at the same time keeping these innate rights that we hold so dear as Americans or wherever you come from, like the freedom of speech, the freedom of free thought. All of those things, I think, go away in this type of world. Because as soon as you have a thought, that's it. It's in the ether. Now it's a digital thought that can be hacked or looked at, so that's why I'm saying that. And I'm just wondering what you guys feel about that.
No. Let me. I want to turn it over to Deep here in a second, but I want to say one quick thing on that. And I think it's so important because I'm a Trekkie. And this is exactly what we talk about when you think of like the Borg, right? This idea to the Borg, this idea of individuality just doesn't exist. They have no use for it, right? It is pure hive mind. And so if we choose as a species to implant these things into our brains and have that constant communication with every other being on the planet, then we have moved beyond individuality. There will be no individuality. And the question is that what we want to keep? And I know, Kristen, you do. Deep, what are your thoughts?
I think that you guys are absolutely on point. That is the most critical issue right now, is to what extent do we get to conserve individuality? And are we going to be okay with the scope of individuality being brought into the entire world, right? Because then individuality gets shifted to the collective rather than just one human mind,
Right.
in the beginning. So there's definitely some trade-offs. One thought that I played with, and I'd love to get, I think, Jeremy, your understanding would be, or perspective would be really interesting here. I've thought about the no cloning theorem as it pertains to consciousness and thought. So the no cloning theorem of quantum mechanics essentially states that you can't actually create a true copy of a quantum state. I'll give you an example. Let's say that this is my atom, right? And it's constantly vibrating one way or another. And it has its location, its position, its velocity, well, really momentum and position are, as Heisenberg pointed out, never going to be determined perfectly. Let's say you could do that and you made an exact copy of it. By the time you make a copy, any type of way that I scan the data of the atom, I would have affected it. Over time, it would have moved. So I'll never have an exact copy of that initial quantum state.
It's kind of like that movie Multiplicity with Michael Keaton. Every time they make a copy of him, it's just a little different.
That's great. Absolutely.
She touched my Pepe, Steve.
Yeah.
Exactly. So imagine now we are. So when I send a message, right, to Michael over Twitter, I'm not actually sending a physical information of the original thing, right? There are copies, digital data being copied from one place to another. That's not going to be the same for thought. By the time I think something, it's technically impossible to copy it exactly. Mm-hmm. So I wonder if we can actually use that to our advantage.
I think it's related to what we call in the study of phenomenology. This would be the branch of ontology, and it's that nothing's defined by itself. It's defined on how it relates to everything around it. More so. So
right.
It's absolutely.
Well, it's this interesting thing, right? Because it's this idea when you start to experiment with some of these technologies, like for example, transportation or what's it called? Not transportation, but when you dematerialize and rematerialize, what's that called? Teleportation. Yeah. So if you were able to physically be able to use teleportation by using spooky action or whatever sort of phenomena you want to use, once you do that, once you disseminate and then reassemble in another place, you are a literal copy of yourself, even though you're carrying the same consciousness that you previously had. And this can be the same thing if you're uploading your brain to a cloud or whatever. And you watch some of these things and you're like, you watch Black Mirror and you're like, who is me? Like what defines myself if I can make a copy of myself and that copy is just like me, but it's not. Like it's very difficult
right now. What if that's what happens every morning you wake up? You wake up as a copy of the person you were yesterday, but your dumbass is living the life of yesterday's self instead of making choices based on today.
Right.
Well, this goes into the whole question of whether we live in a one single universe or a multiverse, because it's like we could be just branching off into all these different possibilities at any given time. And,
I actually use the multiverse as I use the multiverse, and then I learned it from watching a TED Talk from Elon Musk about the idea that two ideas. One from Dr. Dan Siegel, that our brain actually tunes into a plane of infinite possibility. And from that, probabilities are popping up in our mind. And then a level of consciousness is picking up probabilities and turning it into our story, our emotions, and our thoughts. So if you calm your brain down enough, you can actually tune into those gamma spikes of inspiration that are coming from pure possibility into probability. So I think that with Elon Musk's idea is that if we look at what is actually happening and what is needed, because innovation comes from actual need, not because you want it to happen, we can actually reverse engineer from the plane of probabilities backwards to from here to there and go, oh, well, that's the best bet. And then move forward towards that. And as we move, we gain more information and we move towards that probability. So that's the way I think that we should start learning how to think and teach other people how to think. It's harder to do from first principles, but if you do it that way, then all of the problems you think we should be reacting to aren't actually problems. They're just things to solve for. And then we're actually still looking at the vision that we're creating, what is that vision? Obviously, we don't want to all be part of a hive mind. Right.
But doesn't a hive mind seem like the most efficient way to communicate? As weird as that sounds.
Well, yeah, and like for people's desires, like that was something that, not to go into politics, but that Reich was pointing out today, is that we need to understand that the ultimate goal of society is for everyone to be able to live a safe, happy, fulfilling, productive life, rather than our ultimate goal being becoming billionaires ourselves.
Right. And so if we were operating more from a perspective of a hive mind, you would realize that the person who is starving to death it has just as much of a right to eat as the billionaire. And I think that's where, if we want to talk about capitalism and bring that into it, we do have a problem. We have a big problem. And I'm not sure exactly how that gets solved. But I do know that there are advantages to capitalism. It does drive innovation. It does drive these things. But if they're driven on this idea of pure selfishness, what kind of future are we going to create with the technology that is inspired by it?
Yeah, well, I think capitalism needs to ask itself a really important question. And that is, what is enough? Like, how many houses, how many boats, how many billions, how many trillions does one need? You can't even spend it in a lifetime. Right. So there's got to be, I don't want to put a cap on anything, but there's got to be a heavy self-inflicted tax after a certain amount. Like, if you've made $1 trillion in your lifetime, or $100 billion in your lifetime, there's got to be a point where you go, okay, I think I've got the biggest house, and the sink is made of gold. My wife is the most beautiful thing on the world. I am the man, like, okay, great. Now for every dollar you make, you're going to give away 90% of it because you don't need it. And guess what? That 10%, you're still making money, pal. Yeah. You're still making money. So that's still good enough motivation for you to innovate and do all of these things that are wonderful about capitalism, because you could point and hate about capitalism all you want, but you then go ahead and give me another example in human history that's worked better than capitalism. Right now, we've just reached to a point where we really need to put the pressure on this 1% that controls all of these other things and really start asking them the question, what is enough for you?
Dude, Philippe just fucking read my mind right here. We just need the replicator, because that's a post-scarcity society, right? That is when you have a replicator and you can pretty much, 3D print anything on the atomic level. Now you have the ability to completely eradicate all forms of poverty.
So we still need to solve the puppy problem.
We do. So Kristen and I have decided that we have a puppy problem when it comes to the replicator. And the problem is that the replicator can produce yogurt, and we all know that yogurt has living bacteria. So if the replicator can produce yogurt, can it produce a puppy?
I think the answer is yes.
Yeah.
Well, if it can, then it can create a human. And then if it can create a human, like, there's an interesting, piece of the puzzle here that is, you start to imagine what the future is. We have some friends, it's pretty extraordinary. We have some friends that did in vitro fertilization, and it was amazing because they weren't able to get pregnant. They were able to get pregnant with the in vitro, and they had 2 children. One 3 years ago. 4 is he 4?
About 3 years.
3 years ago, and then they just had their second beautiful baby 6 months ago or so.
Yeah.
And these babies are twins born 3 years apart. And it's
Technically.
extraordinary. They're from the same egg. They're from the same batch of eggs.
Wow.
And that's amazing. And so we can do these extraordinary things. And the question is, we're gonna have to start rethinking our ethics and morals and what is okay and what isn't okay, because even their Catholic parents were really hard on them for doing that. And we have to evolve with the technology as it evolves. It's very, very interesting.
I mean, to Lewis's point about the good that capitalism has brought, one of those things is about 2 years ago, Leonard Suskind and John Fresco invented and proposed an entirely new field of science. It's a subfield of quantum computing known as quantum gravity in the lab. And the idea is that it's based on the ER equals EPR postulate by Leonard Suskind. So his postulate is that if you have two wormholes and you they're connected to each other, so you end up on the other side. His claim is that Einstein-Rosen bridge that connects to the wormholes are actually the same mechanism for how quantum information from one entangled particle moves to the other. So his claim is that wormholes are large, giant, macroscopic entangled bodies. And so what quantum gravity in the lab, right? Because the implication is interesting on the other way too. It means that quantum entanglement may actually be due to many wormholes, right? Every time you entangle a particle, you could see it as that way mathematically. Of course, it's a conjecture for now, but there has been some interesting evidence in the past. But so quantum gravity in the lab is a subfield of quantum computing, and what they're trying to do is simulate wormholes on quantum computers based on the ADS-CFT correspondence, Jeremy. So what you have is this ability in the near future where we can simulate how quantum information is scrambled from one wormhole to another. So we can track how that information, your body, will get teleported. And then we can start probing those mechanisms more.
That's really fascinating. So you're saying we can model these things in the quantum computing world prior to, and so we can create hypotheses that are thousands of years ahead of where we would be otherwise.
Yep, you got
Fuck
it.
me.
You go. Singularity.
Right.
Probing the singularity is very much part of their goal in quantum gravity in the lab.
Wow.
And a lot of these quantum computers too, I think with these new technologies like metamaterials and these optical technologies, I think like a lot of these computations and quantum computations could be done optically with condensed light.
Absolutely.
And I've been getting huge for the last 2 years into this research on polariton condensates and surface plasma on polaritons and the polariton exciton pairs, and how there's so much physics involved. It will blow your mind. It will keep you busy for the next 4 years digging into it. And
yeah, you blew my mind. I don't know what to say.
I always love talking to Jeremy is always exploding with so much information that sometimes he doesn't know how to contextualize it in a short amount of time because there's not enough time. Like he just said, it's 4 years or being smashed at about a 30-second,
Back to that original point, like with this quantum computers and these metamaterials is optical imaging and meta atoms, like basically turning the entire, like there's so much potential here, and it really is. I think it's really the future of like where we need to go as far as building a warp drive, because if you can, I don't know, I've thought about all these different ways to do it with these like how would you actually open up a wormhole to another? Could you project yourself like holographically onto that point and then do a switch? Like, what do you think? What do you think like a warp drive would look like in that? Because there's this whole idea that the singularity, we're going to build this AI machine with these quantum computers in the future, and it's going to have 3D printing technology on the atomic level, like we talk about, right? And it's literally going to start building, warp drives on the atomic level, and then like the whole theory is that it's going to instantaneous this hyper super intelligence that we are going to create in the future is going to teleport itself instantaneously across the entire universe and start spreading itself like these type 3 and they're also self-replicating. They're von Neumann machines too. I sent Michael a whole list of stuff. He's like, see what you can come up with in 2 hours before the show. I was like, that's not the scariest thing you ever heard about the super intelligence and in the 3D, like a 3D atomic printer creating a warp drive instant and
Well, Michio Kaku said that we'll have the ability to have this type of printing device, a device that can create matter. He's like, the tech will be here in 20 years. We'll have it in 20 years. But the problem might even be sooner than that. Yeah. But the issue with that machine that can create matter is you can't just throw it out there like a microwave and be like, all right, society, figure out how to use this matter making machine. Because like Michael said, like, you can, yeah, sure, you could create that cup of yogurt, but who says you're not going to create a C4 plastic explosive and, throw it in a mall or something? You can't just, so he said that it will have the tech in 20 years, but you won't see it implemented in society for another 100, 150 years.
That's interesting. I don't know if I buy that or not, because I think that capitalism generally wins.
Right, but not capitalism with matter-making machines. Like, that's something that I think even the most ardent capitalists would be like, whoa, Tiger.
I would go so far as to say the most ardent capitalists wouldn't be rich enough to afford the machine, because
there you go.
These machines of converting energy to matter are based on E equals MC squared, right? Like, not a trope. That takes a lot of energy. So to really materialize matter from just energy, there's still a lot to be done there.
Christina has a question for Deep. Quantum computers, I read a report in a reputable science journal that said they could not function unless they tapped into parallel realities. What are your thoughts on this?
So it's based on, great question, Christina. All of this idea of quantum computers tapping into parallel realities, these are based on one interpretation of quantum mechanics, the interpretation of the wave function that implies that there is a multiverse. Of course, we haven't proven yet that there is a multiverse, or what is the correct interpretation of the wave function. So it may be that quantum computers are doing, this is my own personal opinion, something even weirder than what we think of when we think about the multiverse. I think that, and this is a bit of an edgy take, I think quantum mechanics is still incomplete, that the next theory will really tell us what's happening. That's why you get these kind of strange interpretations.
Interesting. And we haven't even hit on AI yet, right? Because really, when you think about what the singularity is and what it could potentially be, it's really built around this concept of artificial intelligence. And for those of you who don't have a clear concept of artificial intelligence, there's 3 different categories of AI. There's ANI, which is artificial intelligence that has a very narrow range of abilities. So, for example, an artificial intelligence that can beat the best Go player or the best chess player in the world. That's an ANI. An AGI is an artificial general intelligence, which is a hypothetical ability of an intelligent agent to understand or learn an intellectual task that a human being can. So basically, it's your droid, right? It's your droid that acts like a human, can learn like a human, can do all the things a human can do. And then you have ASI. And ASI is your super intelligence, your artificial super intelligence. This is your god of self-replication, of just incredible intelligence, where it can begin learning a subject in the morning. By tea time, it's better than you. By dinner time, it's a god in the subject. Like, this is the level of exponential intelligence we're talking about. And once you have that ASI, and it becomes aware, right? It becomes conscious. Then that's where we don't know. That's where this whole game leaves our ability, and we don't have. So the question is, and I posit this to probably, I'll posit to the whole table. What do you guys think can human coding affect that super intelligence so that it doesn't fucking kill us?
Well, what I took from that is that you celebrate tea time. Wasn't aware that you're a big tea guy. Look, dude, I don't understand. I'm very much of the belief that if AI gets to a certain point, they're gonna look at us meatbags and go, "Why are they here?"
Yeah.
It's just there's no purpose. There's no purpose. I mean, honestly, if you got a quantum computing machine that can replicate itself on the other side of the galaxy, what the fuck are we doing here? Honestly, honestly, I would just tell them, all right, just end it. Like, because I can't contribute anything to you, you know, like I am now that robotic dog that I look at and go, what the hell is that thing good for? Like, that's what they will be doing to me in 50 years. And so, dude,
Right.
I think,
Well,
but if you believe that like one of the ultimate purposes of intelligence is to collect stories of individuals like Le Guin and some of it, yeah.
No, that's a good.
I mean, maybe machines would get to that point.
Yeah, I mean, they could. I mean, the question is, when a machine becomes funnier than Luis, then he's fucked.
I'm done. I'm done. But I'm also thinking of just like, what is society going to do with intelligence on that level? I have a feeling like, look at what we do with the internet. What is the most searched thing? You know what I mean? Like, what is the most searched thing online? Like, think about that and then add intelligence. Like, I just don't. I think they're going to look at us and go, these 80% of these have got to go. The other 20%, maybe we keep them around as like to tell their story. But I mean, I don't think they're going to care. Honestly, I don't think they're going to care about us. That's just my opinion, but please, somebody else. I know nothing about
Wouldn't
AI.
they get bored without us, though? I mean, just
they can't even. They don't have room in their genius for boredom, Jeremy.
Yeah,
like, I think it wouldn't even be a thought.
Well, I don't know. I would test that a little bit. I would say the more intelligent you are, the more susceptible you are to getting bored. So they may just want to keep us around for entertainment. No, that's right. That's our best case scenario, to be honest.
Yeah, that's.
But is it like jump around and do some juggling tricks entertainment, or is it pour my tea entertainment, or you know, like, or is it, hey, let's throw them in a cage and see who kills each other entertainment? Like, I don't know, dude.
Right, but here's the thing though. Like, we're joking about this, but if you poll, you know, some of these academics who are studying AI, most of them think this is going to happen by 2045. Okay, so it's 2021 right now, you guys. This is 25 years. We're all going to live to see this.
Well, I think also by 2046, minorities will outnumber the majority now. Also, so there'll be that going on too. There actually might be more brown people than white people by that time.
Hey.
That's what they say.
Well, I mean, look at this panel. Look at this panel, right?
Yeah. We're taking over,
It's
Deep.
50-50 right now. It's 50-50 right now.
Globally, they already do. It's just here.
What's that? Globally, yes. Right. Muhammad is the most prolific name in the world for you Americans who are so self-centered. You didn't know that.
This is true.
Luis, he was talking to you there, buddy.
No. Hey, but I then again, I have a very American perspective because I haven't been anywhere else, you know. So that's understandable. I could be wrong on that, and I'm good with that.
If it's any consolation, there's going to be a hierarchy even amongst these ASIs. So let's say that I have a quantum data point source, right? So quantum data can be anything, statistics, again, from a chemical system that I'm interested in. And I have a neural network that's running on a quantum computer. Those are called QNNs, quantum neural networks. These things can learn the underlying data patterns because of the quantum correlations. It can actually store them and generate them, generatively design its own quantum data. Now, a regular computer and a regular AI doing the same thing will fail at that. It cannot learn quantum data. It cannot generate quantum data. So if you have a quantum computer that has its own artificial intelligence and a regular computer with its own artificial intelligence, this one with the quantum computer is far smarter. And it, like this classical computer with its classical super AI, right, will not be able to know everything that this guy does. So there's going to be this hierarchy, which is interesting.
But let me ask you this then, Deep. But how long does that hierarchy last if the technology is moving at an exponential rate? Like, does that smarter computer who has control of this one, then this one becomes control of, like, how quickly is that going to move at that point?
So fast.
Exactly. And this ties into what Michael was asking about like really what that is about is what is the solution to the stop button problem, right? You have humans who program the initial concept, Sure, maybe our biases will transfer over to the way these things think. But then you have something as part of philosophy and computer science called the stop button problem.
Wait, say that again. Say that again.
The stop button problem.
Stop button. Okay.
Yeah. Yes. STOP. I'll just explain it really quickly in 30 seconds. The problem goes like this. It's an unsolved problem. Let's say I have a super intelligent robot and I've programmed it to do one thing only, which is bring me tea at 7 p.m. every evening.
Thank you, Deep, for rescuing me.
That is called a callback, ladies and gentlemen. Deep, actually, you might have a future in an improv comedy troupe.
Oh, that's so. If my current job fails, I'll definitely consider it, Louis.
There you go.
So now let's say that tomorrow I don't feel like drinking tea, but that robot is programmed to bring me tea no matter what at 7 p.m. So imagine if I just close the door on it and I ask it not to come in. It's an ASI. What's the door going to stop it? It's just going to burst through the door and give me tea. I can be in Japan. It'll figure out a way to get to Japan to give me tea. And if I have a kill switch on it, it's smart enough to know that this kill switch will prevent me from giving this guy tea. So I'm just going to program it out of my system. So what is the way to program a stop button into these things if they're smart enough to reprogram themselves at any given time? There's no solution yet.
Well, isn't it to give them like an end goal and then have them destroy themselves? Like that's how it in Dan Brown Origin. That's how it works.
But what if, Kristen, they're smart enough to figure that out?
Well, then they have to want to do it, right? Like to destroy themselves at the end.
Exactly. What if they don't want to? What if they're smart enough to know that that's going to happen?
If they change their mind.
It's crazy. What this is interesting from Aaron. Whatever the phenomenon represents, he's talking about UAPs. They have solved the AI issue, or they are the AI issue. Either way, we have no say in what happens, if anything. That's fascinating. Because if you think, I've always had this consideration that maybe this whole UAP phenomenon is our future selves having achieved singularity and having achieved time travel and coming back and looping in and out of this reality or this timeline.
Well, but what if you added also to that, they're the ones popping inspiration into people?
Ooh.
Damn. That would be one hell of a time.
And outrage. They're just bored. They're like, hey, let's poke the rabbit.
Not even so much
Yeah.
that they're bored, but maybe the thing that is enveloping your meat sack is the thing that's coming back and giving you that inspiration.
Right.
Crazy.
You know, like that's the thing that I've been thinking about in the last 2 to 3 weeks is that concept right there.
Right.
Because I love when somebody told me inspiration, is not an original thought. You don't come up with that. Like when Einstein came up with E=mc², he said it came to him. You know, like same thing with Tesla, Da Vinci, all of these just very prolific, world-changing people. And
there are stories that evolutionarily, like different species have figured out the same things on different sides of the planet at the same time, right?
Yep. Well, I mean, that could explain pyramids. You know, why is it that we see pyramids all around the world? I think it's just something that they all knew to do at the same time. You know, like how do skyscrapers pop up around the world? It's these things, they move. They move like as fast as people can talk and trade with each other. And the faster they can do that, the faster that this singularity is met.
So this is an interesting question from John. Can self-awareness exist without the spiritual component? Perhaps we've already seen the answer in an experiment with tiny robots that were programmed to return to a charging source when their power was low. Without it being a feature of their programming, some of the little robots began to hog the power source. That is an interesting question. This idea that is consciousness synonymous with a spiritual self? And you know, it seems, I mean, I would have to argue that it isn't, or maybe that the entire universe is a field of energy / spirituality that then can inhabit whatever intelligence is evolved.
That's an interesting take.
I'm just gonna drop this real quick. I'm gonna be back.
Mic drop.
My kids used to think I used to say mic check, mic check. They thought I was just an egomaniac.
Jeremy, I'm curious to hear your thoughts. I know you specialize more in the anti-gravity side of things. what have you found in terms of the most promising time travel related research? You're muted.
Oh, you're muted. You're muted, brother.
Hey, sorry, I muted myself. I was setting up stuff. Is it all right if I go live on my channel with this? Because this is like really
Sure.
good, and I want to like
Go live. What do I care? Share it away.
I'm gonna plug your channel. I'm gonna bring some people over to
Yeah.
we're gonna get you past 300 tonight. Watch.
Nice.
No doubt.
So yeah, we are live right now. And Deep just asked me a question. Why don't you repeat that question?
You want to go and ask
for
the
us?
question again, Deep?
Sure. Yeah. So I was just acknowledging. I know that most of your research focuses on anti-gravitics, but what has your research led to in terms of time travel? What do you think is most compelling and promising in that direction?
Well, I don't know. I guess it's more my belief that I'm not really a believer in time travel or multiverse theories and stuff. But I think that some of the most interesting research I've found on the subject is by a physicist named Ronald Millett. Are you familiar with him?
No, I don't think so.
So Ronald Millett is, I think he's from Connecticut or Tufts University. He's from around here. I know that, but he's written a couple papers on time travel, and he's also been interviewed on a couple Discovery Channel programs, I believe, and Science Channel on talking about time travel theories and stuff. And he's got a lot of these ideas, and they're based around, some of them are based around trapping light and spinning a whole bunch of light, getting a high energy light spinning in a circle. And I thought that was super interesting. He's got a whole paper on that, and that kind of relates to that whole idea of a warp drive. Is these optical cavities these resonant metamaterials or layered resonant metamaterials, so that they can resonate with all these key frequencies. And I think it has to do in that terahertz range where that gap is in the spectrum, because there's a lot of interesting stuff that's come out of the classified world with regards to that part of the electromagnetic spectrum. And you find a lot of I found a guy that was arrested in Ohio. He worked at Wright State University, and he did a PhD in surface plasma and polaritons, and he got arrested with 1,000, and he just got sentenced last February with 1,000 classified documents he was taking home.
Wow.
So
From where?
Air Force Research Laboratories.
What?
What was
His name is Isaac Kemp with a Z. Isaac Kemp. And I found him because I was just searching. I searched Wright-Patterson classified like every morning, and Area 51, and a couple of these key search terms like news. I searched for any news on Area 51, Edwards Air Force Base, Wright-Patterson, and a couple of other key Air Force bases, and I found this like a year ago. But yeah, so that the Air Force Research Laboratories is studying, trapping light with surface plasma polaritons and doing the same type of research. So
I wish I knew what a fucking polariton was. I mean,
I just learned about it
the amount of
2 years
words.
ago. Yeah. It's just basically polarized vacuum. It's when you pump enough energy into this wave if I pump a resonant material, if I get a resonant material and I get it resonating strongly enough, I can actually create particle-antiparticle pairs. I can pull antimatter out of the vacuum. So if you can create enough antimatter, there's this whole debate in physics right now that all the top physicists at Fermi Labs are trying to see if antimatter falls up or down. That's the big anti-gravity debate that they're all looking for. There's this question of does antimatter react? Is it antimatter anti-gravity?
Right.
We don't know.
Right. Does it have the opposite actual physical effect or phenomenon? Does anti-gravity actually go up? Does antimatter actually go up? Right.
Yeah,
does it fall up?
Right. Does it fall up? That's fascinating.
That is the question.
So there's this.
Michael,
go for it, Jeremy.
I got to get a link for your channel so I can share it with my audience. Why don't you plug your channel and tell people where they can find you?
Yeah, absolutely.
I
You
want
can
to
actually
introduce you guys because we're multi-streaming now.
multi. Oh, we've crossed the streams.
We crossed the
I thought there was no
streams. Yeah, I thought Jeremy said there was no multiverse. He doesn't
Jeremy
believe in
doesn't
it.
believe the multiverse, but here we are.
Yeah, he just created one. He just
guys,
created a multiverse. Somebody
we-
call the New
well-
York Times.
Look, in the multiverse, we just before the streams crossed, we did have a great conversation about the singularity and some of the history of this. And you guys got to go check that out. The first hour, which my channel missed, it's only available on Michael's new channel, so you got to jump over there and subscribe. I'm going to drop a link in the description.
Yeah, I just dropped a link in the comments if you want to grab that, and you can also type in the space singularity space lab. And find it as well. This conversation is fascinating, and I have to say, like, we've been talking about this idea that we are seeing the exponential growth, and we're in this really weird lull period. Like we're in the period right before. I mean, it's pretty amazing what we're seeing with technology, but we're in this period right before it just goes bananas. And so I think so many folks don't realize what we're about to see, because you've got things like quantum computing coming down the pike, which is going to be extraordinary. And right now, I'd love to hear from you, Deep, and I know you got to get out of here, but I'd really love to hear from you, Deep, before you go. Where are we with quantum computing? How close are we to seeing this as something that can be scaled? Because when you think of, and maybe you could just kind of explain what the difference between a quantum computer and what we're using right now is.
Happily. As we learned about, actually technically, we completed the quantum mechanics theory. It was complete, so to speak, less than 100 years ago. But before we discovered quantum mechanics, thanks to Werner Heisenberg, Bohr, and Einstein, and Max Planck, of course, we used to think that there was only one class of physics, known as classical physics, Newtonian physics, which governs the world that we're used to interacting with every day, right? So if I drop this pen, it's going to be subject to classical physics. If I throw it against the wall in a fit of rage, it's going to bounce off based on classical physics. But then we found out that when you look under a microscope, when you look closer at the individual atoms that make up these objects, that make up all of the world around us, they're behaving based on a completely different set of rules, known as quantum mechanics. So what quantum computers do is leverage that. They are doing computing by exploiting quantum mechanical rules. That's what makes them different than regular computers. Now, when we perform a computation, so the streaming, the software that you have right now, all of our computers, they're performing something called error correction. Every time a computation is done by your processor, there's errors that are piling up. And those errors are being corrected. It's called error correction, and they're being corrected by other bits. Whereas with quantum computers we have today, they don't have enough qubits, the quantum version of these bits, to correct themselves. So they're very noisy. They're very error prone. And so when you ask how far away are we from seeing scalable quantum computers, it depends on the task. My company, for example, focuses on using quantum computers for materials discovery. For the next, let's say 10 to 20 years, the best use cases of quantum computers, given their limitations, is being able to simulate other quantum mechanical systems. If you're doing something that involves engineering at the quantum limit, quantum computers are your best friend. So whether you're making semiconductors, superconductors, simulating Polaritons, those are all quantum computer tasks. After the 20 years or so, we'll have fully fault-tolerant quantum computers.
Fully fault-tolerant?
Yeah, fault-tolerant. So fault-tolerant means they're not error-prone anymore. They are doing perfect calculations. So suddenly that will open up an entire world of new problems that can be used and solved on those quantum computers that aren't just related to physics and chemistry. And that at that point, you have things like RSA encryption to worry about, right? You'll be able to decrypt basically anything that's encrypted on the internet today, including a lot of these classified information channels. That's why the NSA cares so much about quantum computing. So I think that, yeah, to answer your question, 10 to 20 years, we're going to be using them for materials discovery. After that, it's going to be useful for basically almost everything to some
Christina
extent.
says quantum AI, error-free, scary.
You don't think the NSA already has a quantum computer?
I think they do. I don't think it's fault tolerant. That's just my opinion. But this goes back to the whole Black Project debate and how far they've gotten, right? My guess is as good as yours. So,
Well, how much funding do you think roughly it would take to build a quantum computer?
it depends on a fault tolerant one. A fault tolerant one is still probably at least I'm going to say $1 trillion away from.
So I can't get it at Best Buy.
Not anytime soon.
Not yet.
Consumers buying quantum computers probably won't happen for another like 30 years if we're going to be realistic.
Wow.
Yeah.
But for fun, you could go into Best Buy and ask for one.
We should do it anyway.
Where's your quantum computer section?
Kind of quantum. Well, I can tell you, man, I think we're close because I was telling Mikey, like these new Apple computers that they just came out with, these Mac desktop computers.
The M1 chip, yeah.
With these M1 chips, this is the most affordable class of computers that I've ever seen Apple put out in my, like I actually looked at it, I'm going, oh, wait a second, I think I could afford this if I wanted to. Like this isn't like my laptop 5 years ago was almost a $3,000 thing. Now you can get a 27-inch monitor with a high retina display and 5 times the computing power that I have for half the price, if not less. When I saw that, I was like, Jesus Lord, we're like, it's almost here. It's almost to a point where anyone could afford it. I mean, look at the little Mac that they got now, the little square that they got. I can't remember what the hell the name of it is. It's $600 and it's a killer computer. It's a killer processor. And that stuff like that gets me crazy excited when I see the prices of those things drop, because that tells me that something else is above it that they've cracked that's really, really good. And they're looking at this going, okay, let's just give this one out. Like this one is, we can make a ton of money off of this and it's still a killer product. I mean, like I never thought I'd see the day where Apple was putting a 27-inch desktop for less than $2,000.
Yeah,
never thought I'd see that.
Incredible, and it's thin. Have you seen how thin the new ones are? I mean, they're just
it's as thin as a laptop or one of their new iPad Pros. It is insane.
It's incredible. And then you have all this cross-domain stuff happening. So you've got Musk putting Starlink into the air, and so now people in, rural China, if they can smuggle, an Apple M1, and you can be in the middle of rural China and have completely free information and uplink to Starlink. And so now,
outside of communist China.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's what I'm saying. Like now people will have the ability to, sidestep their overlords and get access to free information in ways that have never happened before. And authoritarian governments could potentially topple due to this.
North Korea is going to have a huge issue when that day comes.
Huge problem.
Huge.
All right, guys, it was a pleasure. I got to get going. But
Deep, you got to come back and see us, okay?
Oh, yeah, dude. Deep, you got to stop by my show too, man. Jesus.
We'll do, brothers.
All right, man.
All right.
Kristen, cheers.
Later, brother.
Dude, that dude was all time, man.
Dude.
Holy crap. I'm not in that depth.
He's killer.
He's good at explaining that stuff, man. Really good. I know a lot of stuff, but I struggle over my words a lot of times. I'm still, Well,
yeah.
I mean, the challenge, and this is the challenge, right? Like Luis and I, like we're really good at talking shit, but it's just shit. But guys like you guys actually have important things to share with people, and that's why you're on the show. So. But we'll do
more share more important things and do less shit talking. I do plenty of that on my own.
Well, baby steps, Jeremy.
As long as we're all working towards the same goal, and it's constructive criticism, and we're not just it's one thing. It's you could we're all throwing shit against the wall, and hey, if it sticks.
Well, I think that's so right, and I think it's so important too, because nobody has all these answers, and I think the whole point of this show is, my original intent was to call it the Singularity Report, where we would be reporting on breaking tech and science, and we're still going to do that. But I ran the name by Christina, and Christina's like, call it the Singularity Lab. And I was like, oh, I get it, because we're in the lab chopping these things up from both a human perspective and potential and the technology that's evolving. And so I think that we have to figure out, if we're going to have a future that is not a very scary dystopia, we need to make sure we're having these conversations. Again, I don't know if we can program the ASI to not kill us, but we should fucking try.
I mean,
I don't think we can do it.
You don't think so?
We can't even get to the point where we're not killing each other. If we get a smarter life form that is based on logic and an algorithm, it's going to lock us up.
But the question
we can't
is,
even control our own base impulsive nature, and our hurt little feelings get spilled all over the internet or on each other in a traffic jam. Like, I can't get to a traffic jam without someone flipping me off. You know what I mean? Like,
I get it. But if you
but I'm going to
have,
enjoy the ride. By the way.
right, we're either way, we got to enjoy the ride. That's critical. But I would argue, or I wouldn't argue. I would question this idea of this super intelligence not developing, an understanding that is so far beyond ours that it wouldn't be on our level of ridiculous reactionary anger. Like, it just wouldn't go there because it's so evolved. And maybe it would be, this incredible. Do you guys watch Westworld? Have you watched Westworld?
Yeah.
So the ASI in Westworld, I think it was called Rohibim, or it's called Rohibome, and it was based on a biblical character. And basically, the whole purpose of that AI or ASI was to compute the problems of humanity and solve them for us. It did. I don't think it worked out very well in season 3, but it doesn't mean it doesn't mean it can't. So I don't know. I think it's important for it's an important question.
With AI, here's where I would like to see it go. So we've seen Iron Man, right? He has Jarvis. Imagine if we have our own personal Jarvis that is the intermediary between the cloud and us, that gets to know us, and then it actually talks to the ad guy and brings us the shit we want and closes the gap between wanting and getting. And then imagine that we can pose it the problems that we're having, and it helps us solve these problems in a way that meets us where we are and takes us to where we want to be. So we could literally program the AI to be our life coach, our therapist, our collaborator to some degree. And then when we get stuck and it's a human problem, that AI can be talking to other AIs and go, hey, why don't you meet Michael? And then what we can do from that is come together in groups, and then we get this emergence, which is what we're doing now.
That's a cool concept, because you're basically saying, instead of giving up our individuality and moving towards a hive mind, we actually have these intermediary AIs that would allow us to have the benefit of AI without.
That's more of the Adam Smith idea that he was saying, is that capitalism isn't the problem. Human nature is.
Right. Greed is the problem, not the mechanism.
If we focus on ourselves and we fix the greed, my desire is to be happy and to enjoy life. Now, if I'm focusing on myself to create that as a capitalist, I'm going to invest in other people to help them, and then coach them to build jobs or to be the best that they can be, to create more abundance for their family. And that's a downward effect of it. Right. Not so much capitalism in the sense of the Tom shoes of you buy one and we give one to poor people. No, like to the point where free my time up to go and and fix problem. The people that are experiencing the problem have the solution, not me.
Right.
The people in those neighborhoods that need to be built up, they're the ones that can fix it. We just have to teach them the thinking systems and give them the tools and the capital and resources to build whatever the hell they want for themselves and their family and their community. And if we do that and let everybody thrive, we'll experience less inner conflict between each other, and we'll just stay away from the people that we don't like. Like, I don't resonate with certain people, and it's okay. I don't have to. You know, it's all
No,
about.
that's a really good point. That's a really
Well,
good point.
I think that's kind of where Andrew Yang was going with his UBI theory.
Absolutely.
Is that we have to come together as a society and challenge capitalism and say, what is enough for one individual to make before we tax the shit out of them? Like, because if the only way we reach this singularity without the AI fucking killing us is if we give these lower income people and neighborhoods and communities the resources in other words, we gotta say, it's okay if you don't work. We're going to give you the money to pay your bills. We're going to give you the money to make sure you can take care of your kids and make sure that you're fed and that your family's taken care of and you can go on a vacation twice a year or for a month and you don't have to work 80 hours a week to make ends meet. We're going to make up all of those things that you cannot do that are making you an angry, depressed, sometimes suicidal, sometimes even murderistic characteristics, because the pressures of society are so goddamn high right now that it's sometimes easier in some cases for somebody to grab a gun and unload their anger in a mall than it is to talk to a therapist, because they can't afford it, because they don't have the goddamn healthcare to do it. Like, we need to seriously ask the question, what is enough, and what is it going to take to free up this lower level of society and give them the ability? And basically what it is freeing up their time. It's freeing up their time so they can come up with the ideas that we need to change at the bottom and go from the top. It'll never happen in the capitalistic society that we have today. That's why capitalism is a double-edged sword. It's the best thing that we got, but there's got to be a limit. There just has to be. And once the limit is reached, all the extra fat that you have should be poured right into the poorest parts of society. And then now we can really have this conversation about becoming one with the singularity and not having the fear of it killing us.
I think understanding the top and the bottom is important in this model that you're discussing, and the bottom of our society is really like, I guess, our prison systems. And the U.S. has, we call this the country. We call this the country of the free, but in reality, it is we have more people in prison in the U.S. It's the largest prison system in the entire world that we've built. And
more than wait, I mean, that's an important point, Jeremy. That's more than North Korea, China, and Russia. Think about that. Like, there are more prisoners in the U.S. prison system than the most horrific places on the planet.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Which makes you have to rethink about our values and what we pretend they are.
Well, the thing is that the prison system and the way that it's portrayed in the media and to the public is this idea of that, this crime and punishment and law and order, and that, that the law is necessarily instating order in society when... if it was, then we wouldn't have more and more prisoners all the time. It almost seems like this for-profit prison system is just destroyed our society over the years by creating, because it's created. There's a no market.
It's a market. There's a demand for prisoners.
Yes.
Well, those prison systems make genes. They make computing chips. They make all of these goods and services that come out of prisoners that make them working at the lowest labor cost because they're in prison. That's a real thing. Like, that happens.
So that's my thing, is that when we're talking about capitalism, I've said this for years, is that I believe in the free market for some things. Medicine should not be fucking free market.
We have a friend that says capitalism for wants, socialism for needs. It's very easy.
It's a super simple.
Both can exist.
How many medicines are out there that the tax dollars created the patent, and then companies came in, grabbed the patent for no money, and then manufacture $1 pill and sell it for $400, and this is a pill that saves people's lives.
We paid for it.
Ridiculous that the tax dollars paid for it, and then those companies aren't even paying taxes on the profits they're making off of the investment that the government made. That's like the worst business deal of the planet. If the government was doing 20% of their own investment back, we wouldn't have a conversation, because socialism for the needs and the needy would happen, and maybe doing a little bit of an adjustment on the waste of the Defense Department bill, maybe balance a budget, and then we wouldn't have to have my next door neighbor arguing with my other next door neighbor about whether or not brown people are trying to steal from them their jobs or whatever it is that they're trying to get us as common human beings to argue about, because it's a ridiculous argument. Like we're constantly having red herring debates when it comes to capitalism, because it's not an either or, well, capitalism or socialism. It's no, let's pick a little bit of both and move forward so that everybody has at least a path to finding their own way forward.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. I mean, you have to pick the best ideas for specific circumstances. And I'm not a diehard capitalist, and I'm not a diehard socialist, and I'm not somebody, I'm very much interested in solving problems. And I think that problems come on a one-by-one basis. And I also think that there are systems that can solve problems. And if we're not interested in looking into the systems or the possibilities and just shutting it down because we have some sort of dogmatic belief about either capitalism or socialism, then we have a problem, and we're not thinking outside of the box. We don't give ourselves the ability to think outside of the box in that situation.
Well, we've also got issues too, where you've got districts in this country, okay, where in some districts it is literally per capita the poorest districts in the country, where the median household income is $23,000 a year. But yet, a lot of us did. But the congressman in that district, the starting salary for them is $150,000 a year, and they get lifetime health insurance. Like, how can somebody making $150,000 a year represent their constituency that makes a tenth of what they make? It doesn't make any sense. It's backwards. Like, it's backwards. And that's why I say we really have to step back as a society and determine.
Same with the whole idea of
what's enough.
The same with the whole idea of the prison systems and this whole bottom end of society, which I want to make another important point on, and that's that when we talk about that bottom end of society and the idea that we have to lock all these people in cages together and then shun them from society for when they get out, and not, and in other countries they use rehabilitation, and like they have a much lower crime rate, and they have a much, when we view people as ex-prisoners and stuff as rehabilitated and believe in rehabilitation rather than this branding them for life, and we'd have less homelessness. So that we always think of this homeless guy as like, the person is unfortunate that they did something to deserve to be there, and but realistically, if you gave them like the same opportunities and the same connections that some of these other people had, they might have done something different. But there's also
maybe, but there's also there's a segment of that society, Jeremy, that I think you could give those opportunities to, and they're going to say, nah, I don't want it. I'd rather stay here and get high. And even with that part of society, I think it is in our best interest to help them as much as humanly possible.
Well, and specifically because that most of that genre of the population, they're suffering from mental illness, which is why they want to.
Right.
Well, and also, but there are people who, have either addictions or have just gotten used to a certain lifestyle who are happy, who are maybe not happy, but they're content with the life that they're living. And I think this is something that, we've talked about quite a lot, is this idea that, you have people who, even if people like all they want to do is sit home and play video games, like they're still going to fucking consume. They're still going to order pizza. They're still going to, need their car service. They're still going to pay rent. And
a lot of them are sociopaths, so they already figured out how to live in their mom's basement for the rest of their lives.
Right. It's true.
That's an interesting point. That's fair.
It's fair.
But yeah, I mean, and I think that, I just think that there's an important cross domain mentality that we have to have when we think about the technology that is going to bring us into the future and our humanity, right? So we've got to be able to manage both, and technology can't save us. It's not going to save us. We have to play a role We have to be a part of the incoming singularity, as it were.
So you're saying not to be afraid of it?
I'm saying, yeah, I don't think it's healthy to be afraid of it. I mean, a healthy skepticism is fair.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think I wouldn't be as afraid of it if I saw from a political aspect that some of these things were coming down the pipe. I mean, let's see where we're at in 4 to 8 years. What kind of political folks were electing it to the highest offices. But like I remember, listening. But I mean, listening to. When I first and here's the other thing is we don't allow in this society for proper debate to happen. Like the debates between our presidential candidates are a joke. And there's no way to get any real answers or any substantive policy out of any of those debates.
That's why everyone wanted Joe Rogan to host it.
Right. No, and honestly, it would have been infinitely better if he had. That's how sad things are.
Tell the truth or I'm going to put these tarantulas on you.
Right. Yeah, let's please answer that debate question in a fish tank full of lizards. I mean, dude, it would have been. Yeah, no, realistically, he would have ran circles, I think, around both of those candidates that were at the end. And I think if that had happened, I think we would have had some independent merge out of those options. And that's what we need. We need more options. We need more discussion. We need to end this way of how we elect our officials. We need to demand more. We just, as a society, we've just, it's almost like as if we need another Pearl Harbor type event that kicks us in the ass and says, okay,
COVID wasn't enough.
Like COVID wasn't enough. Apparently, 200,000. Well, let me tell you something.
That was a complete takeover by the billionaires.
If COVID killed kids. If COVID had an effect on children like it did,
it would have been so different.
It would have been absolutely different discussion. And now we're talking about UBI. Now we're talking about universal healthcare systems, because now you have a mess where the pain is excruciating. And that's what needs to happen. A very painful, some type of event like that I think it's just going to wake us up and say, okay, everything we've been doing here is backwards and it's not working. And here's the proof.
How long do you think it'll last, though? Because the shock effect of 9/11 made us better Americans together for what, 7 months before we turned into assholes again?
Sure, but 9/11
shaved my beard because I look too Middle Eastern to begin with.
9/11 was 2,000 people. If you had 250,000 children die from this, that's a much different story. And I think it's a different story, especially if it's because the governments were negligent in giving people the right information. And because they were so stupid with the information, it became a bigger mess than it needed to be. And then it highlighted the reason why we need all of these social programs.
And we had social media for everybody to talk about it, that everybody is out there with wild speculation as if it's fact, arguing, and then the talking point goes to Twitter with an idiot from here.
Right, but what I'm saying is that was happening when old people dying in homes. If that was happening to kids on playgrounds, it's a completely different situation. I'm telling you right now. Like we wouldn't be having this conversation if Michael's kids went to the hospital and died of COVID. Like he'd be angry. He'd be wanting answers because he just lost a kid to government incompetence. Like, and now extrapolate that to the parent who doesn't have health insurance or doesn't have some of the resources that maybe Michael has. Like those are the people that are gonna be really, like, you're talking about, like I said, waking the sleeping giant. Like we're in this law because everything's so easy. We got the clickable Amazon. We don't care that the guy who packs that goddamn box doesn't piss for 12 hours. We don't care. Like myself included. I just ordered something from Amazon today and I know how gross that goddamn company is.
It's going to be maybe drones in the future.
I was going to say, like I said before, the guy pissing in the bottle does not have a job in 5 years. Davos decided that 3 years ago that Every company is investing in artificial. Think about an algorithm of Google in this context. Bill Clinton needed 30 interns to find out who the king of Zimbabwe was, enough to know his family. You can go like this and say, hey, Siri, who's the king of Zimbabwe and who's his brother? And know it quicker than the president of the United States did 20 years ago. Okay,
Right.
That's how technology has changed since 1993, 94 to today. Now take everything that you've seen change in society in the next 10 years. That's how much disruption's happening in the next 10 years.
Seth says, once everyone can plug into the AGI net, their IQ would be effectively multiplied to a degree that any stupid, uneducated shouldn't be a problem post AGI. Technology will solve politics by after effect.
Well, hey, dude, listen, I got to go because I actually got to meet my buddies over at UFO Garage. They're doing a show. But dude, this was killer.
Yeah, this was cool too. I'm gonna end it.
I can't wait. I can't wait for Tuesday's show.
Yeah, we're gonna be here. We're gonna be here every Tuesday and Thursday. So why don't we let's do a quick go around so you guys can make sure that everybody knows where to find you, and then we'll just kind of wrap up. So Luis, how can folks find you?
So you can check out my Twitter handle right here at Lou Angeles. Inside that Twitter handle bio, you'll find a link tree. All of my links are there. The show that me and Michael do Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, the Unidentified Celebrity Review. Check us out. We go live pretty much all those days around 4 o'clock Eastern time or 7 o'clock Eastern. And yeah, that's it. That's all for me.
Fantastic. Luis, thank you so much for joining us today. Make sure you follow the Unidentified Celebrity Review. Follow this gentleman on Twitter. Luis, it's always a pleasure, and I'll see you tomorrow on the Unidentified Celebrity Review.
Can't wait, dude, and congratulations on the new show. I think it's really fun.
Yeah, thank you for being here, brother.
All right, dude. Peace.
Tim, tell folks where they can find you.
Man, I talk some shit on Facebook sometimes on my profile page. And if you want to follow Instagram, it's TS Macaulay. I have a website called soulsurferschool.com. It's no, you don't need to give an email address or anything, but I wrote a little story about attention and how to pay attention. It's got a bunch of links to click that have a bunch of things that I believe that if you listen to the videos, it'll teach you first principle thinking. It'll teach you some of the cognitive dissonance that you might have in the world. And if you want more information, you can reach out to me and we can have a conversation.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us, Tim. We're going to make sure we have you back on the show, brother. I appreciate your time.
Nice to meet you, man. I want to reach out to Jeremy. I really have so many questions for you, man.
Yeah, man.
I see how your mind works.
Well, thanks for joining me, and people can find me at The Alien Scientist at gmail.com is my email. Also, alien_scientist on Twitter and alienscientist.com. So, yeah, I have plenty of stuff to look through. It'll keep you busy, and if you ever need me for a panelist or to jump on one of these discussions,
you're coming back, man. Brother. You're coming back. We're gonna cross some streams. We got lots of streams to cross.
This is good, man. Cross promotion where we're building the network and pushing disclosure forward and opening up these conversations, which is cool, I think.
Yeah, it's awesome. Gentlemen, it was an absolute pleasure. Kristen, thank you so much for joining me today at the Singularity Lab. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at Calamity Mike. That might be changing soon to at Singularity Mike. We'll see. But make sure you click on the link below. And thank you guys for joining us in the chat today. It was truly a pleasure. And we'll see you guys here every Tuesday and Thursday, 7 p.m. And we're going to keep bringing these amazing panelists in and day out. So thank you guys, and we'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. Thanks. Take care.
Bye-bye.